Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar. I'm very happy to be here with Denis Tudor, the founder and CEO of Swisspod. I think Denis, we've been in contact for the past 4 years together, and we've been, in discussions about your fundraising journey and your growth since, you were pitching a crazy idea and everyone was looking at you as the crazy guy with a crazy idea. And as time passed by, money still came pouring in somehow, with a lot of hard work on your side and a lot of energy. I think I remember, sometime in fall last year, you told me, look, I don't take days off, just maybe once or twice per year, and it's just the energy that drives you. And I think that this energy also drives your fundraising efforts. And so today we're here to discuss a bit more about how what was the progress so far, and how did you end up raising the amounts that you raised. How did you did it, and for us to walk down a bit through the history line, and also a bit about the plans of your fundraising journey. So to start, if you could start with a short introduction about yourself, how you started Swisspod, and then we'll dive a bit deeper into your fundraising journey.
Thank you, Eric, for the introduction. Um, I would also like to thank SeedBlink for the opportunity of successfully fundraising on the platform. I think it's been so great. I think we raised with the last round a total of close to 600,000 euros, which is not a small amount for a deep tech startup. So I'd like to be very thankful about that. And it's been an amazing ride. I mean, we started back in 2021. Um, for the sake of fun, let's admit that first time you didn't really trust, but then we we caught up again, and we had a different discussion, and I think things have been going well. And I think you are right of having your own questions, and I think everybody can have that. I think it's normal to kind of address that type of questions, especially when you come on the investor side. So yeah, I started exactly 10 years ago with a Hyperloop adventure. Let's put it this way. I'm 31 years old. I started when I was 21. Elon Musk launched a competition about Hyperloop at SpaceX. So he basically built a vacuum tube of 1 mile. And he said, well, who wants to come and test in our tube here in Los Angeles is more than welcome. So but there are so many people interested in testing this kind of this kind of technology with SpaceX and Elon Musk, and it was obvious that there's like a lot of people. And he said, well, there are too many applications for for this, so we'd like to organize a competition about that. So I've been part of a competition which was based in California, and there are 10,000 teams registered for the competition, and we made it for the final 100. So we basically came up with a design of a capsule that could actually go into that tube that Elon designed. So um, after like the final, there are chosen like 25 teams to build a capsule and come and test that capsule. And after the design competition, we won the first place for the design. And then I moved to the Bay, where we built a capsule we suggested as a design to SpaceX. And I think that was an amazing experience. I think that was kind of like like let's say it was like most of the fun was in that year, like during the summer of 2016, where we built a capsule. We were all like staying in an Airbnb, and we kind of built that capsule in a kind of small kind of container. But long story short, in January 2017, we tested the vehicle we designed a year ago, and we got the the innovation award. There are like 3 awards given at that competition, like speed and construction and innovation. So we got the innovation award. And after that, because we're not a university team, we're not allowed anymore to be part of that competition. So I had to come back. So I came as a PhD student at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Lausanne, where I pursued my PhD in Hyperloop designs with a crazy professor that kind of has been the only one in the world accepting such a thesis. And because I was kind of challenged uh, by different, like in different ways I was challenged. I wanted to pursue once more the competition, so I created a new team here in Switzerland based in a university while I was doing my my PhD. And we won again basically a different prize at the competition in 2018. And I think that was my third meeting I had with Ilan. But I was actually like a more fun meeting, and we had like a longer conversation about the future of transportation, the way we see the product development on Hyperloop, and I think was a very great conversation. So we incorporated Swisspod back in 2019 while I was still pursuing my PhD, my doctorate into at here at this university at Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. So you, Eric, came last year and visited like the whole R&D facility here and the campus of the university and all this neighborhood. So we're all here in Lausanne. So that's how we got started with Swisspod. So it's been kind of long journey into Hyperloop in general. But since 2019, we have operated Swisspod, I think, um, successfully. I mean, it doesn't mean that we have like now full success today, as we don't have yet clients. But I think we came up with a great technology, with great designs, with great progress on our product, and kind of getting closer to have our first client. So that's kind of that's been the whole journey so far. So yeah, it was cool. It was pretty, like, I really enjoyed it. So yeah.
Can you also walk us through a bit, your fundraising history? Funding such a crazy dream was for sure not, the typical I have 10K MRR kind of play and I want to grow it to 100. So can you walk us through a bit your fundraising history and what you've achieved so far?
Well, I think uh there are many stories about fundraising, but I think the first money we put in was like the founder money. But let's say the first investor that came in was probably like a couple of months after the incorporation, from one of the actual board members we have, that he joined the board like years later, because I've developed a great kind of relation with the professional relation with him. And there's like a angel investor here in Lausanne that was following like startup technologies, and um, they've been looking to invest, and we had no shareholders agreement. We had no we had no term sheet even. We basically had nothing at that moment. I mean, I mean, to be honest, we didn't even know that the company should have a shareholders agreement, or like how an investment technically happens. What means to issue shares, for instance. So um, he invested. He just transferred the cash. That was like signed a subscription form, which was like half a page document, and he said, "I trust in you." And I thought that's normal. I thought that's kind of like the way it happens. And we didn't even have a name for that fundraising, but we started actually to get his feedback. So he mentioned this, well, I'm like a 50K investor, so I can afford like investing without any paperwork. It doesn't really, mean much for me, so it's kind of fine. And I trust you, but you gotta be ready for different type of discussions in the future. And we got then into our next funding round, which was also kind of like a group of friends that invested, which happened a bit like differently, though, because we had a term sheet. We didn't have a shareholders agreement though. And the next one, I think, was our seed round. And during our seed round, the seed round was actually launched after we got granted by the Swiss government. So I think that was the big trigger for our seed round. So we got a value of 4.5 million Swiss francs of grant from the Swiss government in a consortium um, with the university I graduated from to develop Europe's first hybrid test track. And that was kind of like a sign that made a couple of angel investors and even a VC to invest and close like I think was like a 1.1 or 1.2 million Swiss francs. And at that moment in time, we did our first shareholders agreement and kind of a proper investment round. And after we kind of delayed that round for another 2 million Swiss francs. So actually we said, well, this is gonna take us some time to develop this technology here in the test track. So there's the time of the pandemic, was kind of like this the volatility. I mean, it's still volatility today due to other reasons, but was kind of like similar situation. So we were kind of advised by kind of people we're close to. That would be great just to kind of prioritize cash at that moment in time and less in terms of valuations and which I agreed and I still agree with even nowadays. And we went after to pitch in a certain forum in the US. One of our investors actually brought us in that forum to pitch, and we got another 2 million Swiss francs from that pitching. So something that looked extremely impossible was translating into a successful grant coming from the Swiss Innovation Agency in a collaboration here in Switzerland with a great university. And at the same time, as a consequence of that, kind of, in my opinion, trust developed with the Swiss institutes here, um, we got kind of our seed round in place, and I think that was also the first moment when you guys at SeedBlink um, let us participate on your platform. So I think, well, I think that was a great opportunity. But I think it's been like very tough. I think we raised, I mean, firstly there's pandemic and then there's the war, and I'm mentioning the war here in Ukraine because I mean, most of the material we're currently using in our test tracks are steel, and in Switzerland most of the steel comes from Russia. So the price of steel increased like 10 11x at the moment the war started. So we had basically to redesign the whole capsule, the whole tubes, and the whole rails inside, and it was like kind of a tough period of time. We're late almost with a year. For a year, we're late with our initial test here in Switzerland, and that delayed kind of like our next funding round. So now it's the whole volatility of the stock market, which delays the IPOs, which delays like returns in the VC ecosystems, which delays investments into more risky or deep tech startups. So even nowadays, even I was just talking to Eric before we joined the webinar, that even if I don't like to admit it, it's volatility. It's kind of like a difficult environment. However, we started our pre-series A like a year and 1 or 2 months ago. And we had a 7 million round, but in the meantime, we got another Swiss federal grant and another cantonal grant in the company that actually triggered very well our pre-series A. And we are about to close this pre-series A at 7 million Swiss franc nowadays. And we get close to, including grants and equity, we're getting close to 20 million, more or less, US dollars that we we raised during these years. And the pre-series A was like kind of like structured in a way we could encourage a sort of lead investors to validate our terms, because we had two tranches in our pre-series A. The first tranche was with 20% discount of the share price. That made people jump and complete very fast the first tranche. And then we kicked out the second tranche at the end of this summer, I think, like beginning of the fall. And we had a sort of a lead investor for the second tranche. And during the second tranche, we also had a very well-known investor that committed and made things easier for the future investors. It's basically the family of Porsche. So they invested after we had a kind of a it was kind of a conference on Richard Branson Island with Richard Branson and with him about the future of transportation. So that made him to invest and made other investors to commit. And we're kind of getting now close to the end of our pre-series A. During this last couple of months, I think we're kind of in the last million Swiss right now to close. And what's exciting is that even though the ecosystem is kind of volatile, the last two investors we signed are two VCs. It was extremely difficult for us to sign VCs so far, but the last two, I mean, one is signed, one is kind of like a very advanced due diligence, checking a couple of details in the legal part of the company, which it's a good sign if you get there. There's a good likelihood that that's gonna happen. So I think that's kind of like great, because we sort of change our strategy that will be more visible for our Series A, the way to go to market. And that kind of change, even though like the technological advancement, I mean, technological advancement is great, and we're gonna have in 4 weeks from now the largest hyperloop test track in the world in our partnership with the U.S. Army in Colorado. That didn't really make investors to commit more, or that didn't really change the mind of VCs to invest more, was more our strategy to go to market. So I feel that's something that probably at the beginning we kind of neglected, and we didn't really put so much effort into that. However, that kind of changed our fundraising, and I think again, I think the last two investors we signed are two VCs which are kind of becoming, which I mean, it's one thing to sign kind of family office angel investors, and I think it's a much different game of signing like a VC. And
Well,
that's been something.
sorry to interrupt, but I think that's a point that I wanted to ask you. You know, what's the difference, and what has been the perception in fundraising? Both, I mean, you've raised from retail investors, angels, family offices, and VCs right now. So how has that experience been different between the type of actors that you've had? And also, you know, one may look at your fundraising strategy and say, look, they've raised from people that believed in them, but was there also a structure behind it, or how did you plan for this fundraising to actually happen?
Well, so I mean, first of all, we don't really have. I mean, today we might have it, but like until like 6 months ago, we didn't really have the luxury to choose our investors. I think that's kind of the reality. Um, However, I mean, the difference, I think they look at different things than family offices or angel investors would. They I mean, even I mean, they actually go and look more into the go-to-market strategy rather than the team technology potential, even the legacy of the company. And I feel, for instance, with these two last VCs that were getting signed, that the discussion was more oriented towards the go to market and how we are going to monetize this. And also in the due diligence process, I think that was a much tougher one. So the last time we've been like sending emails for the last 2-3 weeks about documents and about scenarios and about what's gonna happen and how it's gonna happen, and like they go very deep into, for instance, employment details, like are we gonna actually oblige people, for instance, to have a non-compete clause for 12 or 18 months, or so because our kind of like strategy is more medium to long term, because we're kind of like, I mean, we do some kind of crazy stuff, so that takes some time. So then it means that even if an employee leaves, we kind of need to be covered for medium to long term as well. So then the non-compete clause should be longer. That makes things more difficult when you kind of like employ people, because at the same time you don't really offer like huge salary and high, like kind of like super competitive salaries, and you incentivize people with options, but most of the employees, they don't really get that point. So it's kind of makes things more difficult. And the due diligence, it's been very different than one with I mean, the family of Porsche, I think the family of Felix Porsche, I think, was like more um mm, they were looking more like a VC to it. So we kind of started to analyze that in that sense. But I think the VCs that we've been talking to in the last 2 months have assessed the different due diligence, and we're a bit surprised. However, so far it went well, and I'm very happy that they also got the time to come and visit us in person in Lausanne. Because I have another statistics, I think more than 50-60% of investors that came to Lausanne or to US test track, they invested, they committed. So when they take that time, I think it's a good sign, a promising sign that they are gonna commit sooner or later to invest in the company. So it's been a bit of a much different game, like was more intense during this period of time, but at the same time that even the ticket size ticket size is bigger. So I think the effort is well proportioned. So
And on the coming back to, to angel investors, and you had a mix of angel investors and also retail investors joining in. So the first question is, how did you feel, this uh volume game, in a sense of having a lot of people, and it takes a village to build a dream, basically. Do you have any kind of examples where specific angel investors helped in your journey? And as a follow-up, let's say the reverse side of things is, people say, okay, bringing in too many people into your shareholding dilutes a bit this aspect of, let's
well,
say,
the most important,
seriousness.
yeah, the most important sign, I think, was when I remember a couple of investors, especially in the US, angel investors, that they say, well, I mean, sort of like, well, I'm gonna throw like 50K into this company. I mean, it's because 50K, if the company gets successful, is gonna be a 1000x probably. So I can afford like throwing like 50K because it can become big. But I think, I think a good sign was that like a year later, that 50K translated into a $500,000 investment. And I've seen couple of such investors like saying, well, I'm gonna commit a small amount, but I'm gonna kind of top up the investment. So after our initial discussion, when we kind of like didn't go on SeedBlink after our first discussion, I said, well, it is what it is, so we have to move on and we'll see. And then I already had these experiences with people saying, well, I'm going to invest a certain amount because I believe Mostly they believe in the founders, or they believe like in the team, or maybe in the tech, in the opportunity. They see a bit of a trust from the Swiss government. So it was a good landscape. So then we switched back to SeedBlink, and we kind of had the second discussion, because I kind of realized that, for instance, there are like even more probably smaller investors that they would like to commit like 5, 10K, 2.5K even tickets, that if there are many of those, I think is going to be a significant ticket, which actually is the case. So of course, like when you get like lower size ticket size, but kind of many shareholders, it's becoming more difficult to manage the whole company in terms of corporate. But I have to admit that in the last 6 years, I think we signed the shareholders agreement, and we voted in 100% manner at all our general assemblies. So it's actually and you know, Eric, that I'm kind of communicating every month to shareholders and to people, and I'm kind of very open, and I, you know, if we need to do something, I'll explain that. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's we have a significant number of shareholders in the company at this moment in time. However, I think we manage it well. And probably in the future, if we kind of need to change that, because like a much bigger investor is gonna come and wants to do something, we'll probably like find a way with our shareholders, because they will probably understand that we need to grow, and they want us to succeed. So it's I think you kind of it's becoming difficult when you claim it's becoming difficult, when you are not really in the mood to communicate to your investors, when you kind of get tired of all that. um, and usually that comes when you are not in the mood anymore to do what you do, and probably you need to change your job. And I'm extremely happy the way it is today, and I mean, it's not like just the feeling I have, is it's also the number that shows that we took all decisions with 100% manner. Of course, we got questions and we had to explain that. But in a long term, I think was totally fine. And I think there have been many people that appreciated the way we run the company, and the transparency we had with our shareholders. And actually, we'll commit also in the future to do that. And well, is this ideal to have, like, I don't know, 40 shareholders, or I don't know how many we have? So like around 40. So, well, it's not really ideal, but without them, we have to admit that we wouldn't have been where we are today. And it's thanks to them, like the whole advancements we've done so far. So um, probably there is no ideal scenario for a company like us, where, you know, we started from a dream, from experience, from a story, with a product that it's kind of dependent on new type of infrastructures and regulations. um sure, there should be somewhere a compromise. It cannot be everything perfectly aligned, and the compromise was that we accepted even smaller tickets at the beginning, but now we're kind of increasing. So the minimum ticket size now for new investors coming during this round is 250,000 Swiss francs. So we, in the past week, like last round, we accepted even like 15, 20, 25K or something like that. So from new investors. So it's kind of like changing, and we've been advancing pretty well. But at the same time, I mean, we started this from zero, like literally zero, and we fundraised almost 20 million US dollars today. So there should be somewhere a compromise somehow. So
All right. And to this point, about complexity and how you're dealing with it, a lot of people are also, fearing the complexity of running a crowdfunding campaign of some sort. So, and I think we've done already three together
yeah,
over the past year.
successfully actually.
Exactly. So what are the myths that you had going into this? Like, did you had any misconceptions saying, okay, I'm afraid about this, but let's see how it goes? And then
Well,
what
I,
are the
I I love
learnings?
it. I love it. I actually love it. And I regret that we don't have an ongoing campaign on SeedBlink. Uh, the whole regulations and closing the round and all those timelines, I kind of like staying against that. But Other than that, I think I was extremely happy. I think I'm extremely in, and you know that I'm responsive anytime during the day and night, and I'm kind of active and answer very fast. And um, I think it's like one of the things that was really, really great is that usually with investors, like even with angel investors that they come independently to a company to invest in, they take some time to check that here and there. So it's not like something you can really follow from hour and hour to see how it's evolving. However, what was exciting about SeedBlink is that um, people were investing and they're like in a very dynamic way, and things were changing from, let's say, in some days from hour to hour, especially when I was to the Richard Branson Island and we had that announcement. Remember that during that day, we raised like 40K euros, like on the platform, or something like 50K euros during that day. And it was great because I mean, I think following that real time on the platform was really great. So it was like kind of changing another 5K, another 10K. So, well, they're not like high amounts, but it gives you like more drive. So the life of entrepreneur, especially like for a company like we have, like there are ups and downs, roller coasters every day. So you have like a bad email and a good email, and then it's like a shit email back, and you go to hell, and then you go to, it's kind of like a complex day, but you can actually get your drive back and your energy back, like seeing all these people investing on the platform, like, and changing from hour to hour, like the amount of money you raise. And I mean, the definition of a CEO in such a startup, the success, like the definition of success of a CEO in such a startup, it's based on the fundraising. And seeing that, it means that people, they have trust, so it gives you back the drive, gives you back the energy. And it's not only about the cash we fundraise, but it gives you that dynamic environment for us to check, and every moment in time saying, well, we did another 20K, another 30K, another whatever, 50K. So that's extremely great, I think, doing it on SeedBlink. Um, I think one thing that and I don't think it's SeedBlink fault, or like you guys did anything wrong. I think it's the whole regulatory system behind, the whole paperwork, waiting times, transfer of the cash, and that part. But I think that's something like, this is how the law is, and it's not under your control. So i think I think that's something that in general Europe should adapt like faster to the reality of nowadays ecosystem. So uh, I think people in that part, I think they should see the way things are done and to kind of facilitate things to move faster, to make it easier. And I think that's something that can probably be improved in the future. But again, it's probably something you just can lobby, but not much. You cannot really change that on your, it's just like a law of a state. So, um, but other than that, I think it's been a great experience. Again, not only because of the amount of cash we raised, like 600,000 euros in total from the SeedBlink campaign. I think we have over probably like 150, 120 investors coming from the SeedBlink platform from many different nationalities. I think that's kind of already a community of people. But I think it's also about how dynamic it is. And I think for CEOs watching that every day, I think it drives you to have a great energy and to kind of like run the startup every day, regardless of your ups and downs. And I think that's great. I think that's an amazing opportunity. That's what an investor should actually offer to the entrepreneur. I think should always kind of give like a positive and encouraging energy, and um um not other things.
So on this note, besides the capital that investors are bringing in, what are your expectations from them? Like, how do you expect what are your usual interactions with the investors, and what do you expect from them?
Well, I think we take decisions day by day, and I think the first thing when interact with an investor, and I'm pitching very positively about the company, of course. However, we are also associated with risks, and I think I've seen many times people changing their behavior when it comes to cash. So I always like to have that discussion with people before signing the agreement, saying, well, this company can go in bad situations due to many different reasons. At the same time, we are going to, I mean, all the expenditures of the company are transparent. We have a data room updated so we can check like how much we pay salaries, how much we pay here and there. So that's totally fine. However, for instance, give you an example, like at this moment in time, probably like 70-80% of our capitals goes into building the full-scale test track in the US. And kind of a VC, can, ask you, and I think they would be right to ask that. Why would you spend such an amount of money buying steel? You don't really create direct value in the company buying that steel, but buying that steel actually creates an environment where you can validate your technology. So, there's a whole explanation. So, uh, I would like an investor, to believe and to trust our actions. Of course, that trust comes in time as well. I totally agree with that, but um, we haven't really spent any cent of the company like in nonsense. Actually, we've been running the company like in a kind of cheap way. We always stayed hungry. I mean, even personally, I mean, this is the sixth year of the company, and the first five, personally, I haven't been paid by the company. I've been like running it full time, but I haven't been paid, and I was the last one. So um, I would like investors to have trust that we're well intentioned, and then our mission is to get this product done. And I think that's the interest of everybody. And whoever is not aligned with this interest, and it's kind of our employee, is not going to be our employee anymore. And in time, this is going to change. So I would like that investors to have the trust that we know what we're doing, and to kind of like support that initiatives with further investors. So I think it's very important when an investor invests, but also brings, I mean, you know how it is, Eric. So when there is a VC investing, there are another three probably waiting to invest as well. So I would like that investor to activate the other three investors as well, and to kind of help us close the round faster. So I think the greatest recommendation for an investment is like when you invest and tell your, let's say, friend that he needs to invest. And I think that's kind of the real way to recommend an investment. If you don't invest and you verbally recommend to invest, I think that's kind of a very weak recommendation. So um, that's kind of like what I would like to have from an investor, something that we have with our investors. I think that's been going great. I don't remember we had kind of a complicated investor or something that would ask nonsense questions, or I think it's been great so far. Maybe it's also due to our transparency to the shareholders. So yeah.
Thank you so much. And there's an additional question related to you mentioned during your presentation that most of the people that visited the facility, especially either the one in Lausanne or the one in Colorado, that was a psychological exercise that put them over the line in which it made them decide to invest. What do you think were the reasons behind it? Is it just seeing the actual track? Was it seeing, the team? What was in hindsight the trigger effect that converted non-believers into believers when seeing the track?
So our weak point and our weakness um, is still the strategy to go to market. I think we do not have a final way, and I have to be, I mean, I'm quite transparent into that, but we're currently working very hard. Our weakness is our strategy to go to market, which is actually the first product that we're gonna sell to who? And that's something that we've been working on and we're shaping it. So we're kind of now looking to have an open air transportation system in a repurposed type of high-speed railway where investments in the infrastructure are going to be minimized by moving the whole electricity from the grid or electromagnets into the vehicle itself. So we currently, the mission of the company is building self-driven AI robots propelling themselves very fast. That's kind of the new type of product we're currently doing. And that's still our weakness because we don't have that final design and that final strategy to say, well, that's exactly the stakeholder, that's who is going to pay for it, and that's how we're going to run it, and that's the amount of money we're going to make out of it. But we have a lot of other strengths, and that strengths are coming from the intellectual property. First of all, from the patents we actually got accepted with internationally in US, Canada, Europe, Japan, and all those kind of important jurisdictions. And I think the team, it's an important asset we have. I think we have an experienced team at the C-level. I'm the youngest one. I think I'm surrounded by senior people, 40 years plus, with like 15, 20 years of experience in their domain. So I think they're extremely eager to get this done, and they're also they have a lot of knowledge about what we do. And the third point, I think what's really impressive, it's when you see the two facilities, the one in Lausanne and the one in the US, because it's real, you can touch it. It's we're both a software and hardware company, so it's not kind of just a, I mean, nothing wrong with that, but it's not only kind of a software platform where we sell whatever. It's actually a kind of a real life technology. You can touch it. You can see the capsule moving inside. You can actually, in the US, you can walk inside of that tube and see how it feels. So I think that's kind of changing the perception of people. You know, about the first 2 points, the IP and the team, I think that's something they can do it online, and, you know, they can meet people online, we can talk, and then they can check the IPs. They're public, like on the WIPO website, so people could do that. But you cannot really get the real and true feeling of visiting the facility here in Lausanne and the one in the States. And I think that's how it's going to look the future of transportation. And people, like investors, are changing more and more in time, even in Europe. And they would like to be part of the future of transportation. And I think when they touch and they see it moving and we explain it to them and they kind of realize what we do, I think that's kind of changing their decision. And we also have like a whole tour. We kind of like, I mean, it's almost like a tourism. So when somebody comes and visit, like here, we have like a whole tour. We have like kind of like a introduction in a conference room, and then we take them to our SpaceX capsule, and then the other capsule that we built for SpaceX in the Swiss Museum of Transportation, and we bring them to the facility, and then we bring them here and there. I think there's a whole tour, and people get impressed with the whole 10 years we've been actually pushing this technology through. So they say, well, these people seems like legit, and they don't have the final idea how to get that yet, in the market. We're kind of like on that path, but again, we don't have yet a full idea on that. So they will do something. So that's kind of their feeling. They kind of successfully managed to do that and that and that. They realize that they're not fully ready to go to market, which is a good sign, because it's I think it would be a huge mistake saying, well, we certainly know how to do this, but we still don't have any revenue. Yeah, we don't have any revenue because we still don't know exactly the final shape of the product. That's the truth. And I think they appreciate that. At the same time, we're self-aware, but they see the potential. They see, well, they did that. They started from nothing, from literally zero. They started from a story. They put a team together. They convinced the Swiss government. They convinced the university. They convinced the U.S. Army. They convinced 40 investors and the whole community on SeedBlink. And they see those and kind of like checkpoints. And when they got also the feeling of the reality and how the tube looks like, the capsule looks like, they say, well, sure, sure, sure. I think there is no perfect startup nowadays. This is their weak point. That's kind of the weakness we have, but I think they'll manage to get something, with this company. So I think that's kind of like what's actually changed, like between an investor that wouldn't take the time to visit and one that would do it. So
All right, and then wrapping it up, as I have one final, usually, the final question that I have is, what advice would you have, for founders exploring their fundraising journey? Whether, your three main takeaways that you've learned over, the past 20 millions raised.
well, um I think the first, I mean, especially tech people or scientists that they're kind of creating the startup. I think one of the common mistakes happening is that on the founder side, and I did that as well. It's not staying fully humble. I I think founders should be fully humble when they fundraise. I think at the moment in time, the fundraising process and the due diligence process and pitching and all this is becoming extremely frustrating. Um, but at the same time, you have no choice. So you have to pursue that path, and I think that path is gonna sort of form you and educate you and get you ready for next one. If you don't pursue that path, I think you will never be ready actually to step up on your fundraising. The second one, I think, I think what most of the tech founders would do, they kind of fall in love with their technology. They believe that that's the best and nobody has it, and all kind of like sort of and I think they somehow need to market, I mean, their technology and their future product. I think that's something they should definitely do. However, they should never ever lie with anything about that. And I think that also happens quite a lot, especially on the tech side. So I'm not saying you should underestimate your technology. I don't think that's the point. But I think at the same time you need to be grounded and positively market that technology and that product. And always, like, I think you need to I mean, I know it's super tough and it's not something I'm always doing, so I'm also do that mistake, so I realize it. But I think you always have to catch your good energy into fundraising and pitching. I think life is tough. I think fundraising is tough. I think it sucks many times. It sucks, and the a deal breaker can happen so easily, and I know it's frustrating. And it can happen not due to you. It can happen due to the investor that doesn't really understand something, or is not open, or doesn't want to take the time to understand it, which is extremely frustrating. But I think you should be very resilient to that, and I think you should keep your good energy into fundraising, and I think you should keep your positivity. I think a startup should be fun. I think should be something you enjoy. If you don't enjoy it, don't do it. Better get an employment somewhere in a big corporation. So
All right. Well, Dennis, thank you so much for taking the
do you
time.
have time to get Q&As or no Q&As today, Eric?
I mean, I've picked up, there were several questions
Oh,
in the chat, and I've picked them up,
oh, okay.
I
Okay.
integrated them basically in the questions that I had.
Okay. Okay.
So, I mean, with this being said, I want to thank you again for taking the time, and I want to thank everyone for joining and tuning in, and the questions that were asked. I think, as a wrap up, that, I mean, at least the takeaways that I'm having is you have an energy that is something that I look up to, and I think most people would look up to. So this being said, you know, I enjoy every conversation I have with you just because it, you know, it brightens up the energy for others. So thank you for that, and I think this is a clear message towards people that fundraising is hard, building startups is hard, but at the same time, you know, you need to have this, let's call it crazy drive that gets you through the day and gets you through the week and gets you through the year. And you know, building one step at a time, you see the results compounded over time. So I think this is what's happening to you, and you know, I'm excited to watch in the sidelines and see how guys are your how you guys are evolving, moving from now.
Thank you so much, Eric, for the support, and thank you also for the whole SeedBlink team. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Have a lovely day.